Hello 1000 PS fans, hopefully it's me, Jacqueline Highsider, and I'm going to test two bikes for you, Harley-Davidsons. It's the Street Glide and the Road Glide. Oh no, sorry, this the Road Glide. I don't know, but I don't care because they look really good. But the boys asked me to test them. Of course I can't test them because they are too fat for me. Because I'm a slim girl and I can't test these fat bikes. So Farley will test it for you. Stay tuned.
My dears, here I am. Faking your voice is pretty difficult. Jacqueline Highsider tested herself really well. I'm back at the start now. Yes, my dears, here I am. I've got my voice well roped off, but these things are too fat. Yes, they are too big Harley-Davidsons, but they don't ride too badly. And what I can tell you now, after the first ride, it's a world premiere. They ride very differently. Let's stay with the design for a moment. Of course, that's everyone's own taste and their own business. I was always a big fan of the Road Glide. I know which one is the right one. The Road Glide with the shark nose pulled back a bit, it still has that. What I miss a bit is that I liked the twin headlights. Now it's such an overall structure. The man in charge at Halle told me, well, just imagine, those are the shark's teeth there. And I think to myself, yeah, okay, looks cool anyway, so it looks really cool. But I like the Street Glide a bit better now. With the LEDs over there on the side, that will be the twin headlights. So you have to decide for yourself. I personally like the Street Glide better. Nevertheless, from a riding point of view, I would actually go for the Road Glide. Why? It's all a bit controversial. As already mentioned, they both weigh a lot. Uh, 368 kilos for the Street Glide, 380 kilos ready to ride for the Road Glide. That's a difference of 12 kilos. You could say that 12 kilos is not too little for a motorbike. However, at 380 kilos and 368 kilos, 12 kilos probably doesn't matter. So then you could think again with the Road Glide the weight, but those extra 12 kilos is actually on the front. Because yes, that's where the difference is. The rest of the two motorbikes, engine, chassis, tires, suspension, it's all identical. The weight is actually on the front, okay? But on the Road Glide, the fairing is mounted on the chassis. That means it doesn't rest on the handlebars. And on the Street Glide, the more delicate fairing is mounted on the front fork. You move it with you. And then the handlebar itself is much higher on the Road Glide than on the Street Glide, and that accounts for the fact that the Road Glide actually has a more active, and it has to be said, sportier behavior. The higher handlebars give you an insanely good grip on the high weight. I would say that you sit more comfortably on it, but riding the Road Glide is actually sportier, more intuitive, better. Well, I like the ride on the Road Glide better. The differences that we noticed today when riding and the fact that I'm standing there in my body is only because I was too stupid to take a jacket with me. It's freezing cold and it was the same on the ride. Pretty cold, and the mopeds are a bit damp from the rain anyway. They were both riding in the dry at the beginning and then got wet. The wind protection for the hands is definitely better on the Street Glide. You're right behind the fairing. You're over it on the Road Glide. Otherwise, both Grand American Touring, that's what Harley-Davidson calls these two new models. So they belong in this class of Harley-Davidson. Basically super tourers in themselves. Yes, let me tell you, blowing along the motorway is certainly great. The wind protection is given on both, let me say. Of course, it's not a super high disc, but that's not what they want. They are simply baggers and embody this style really well. There are also touring bikes with high discs, and I had a jet helmet on when I was riding because I really wanted to put on my Stars and Stripes X helmet. Well, it does blow a lot, but you can also get a bit smaller, and then you can see through the windscreen, but it's heavily tinted. So let's just say that cruising works perfectly. I think that Harley-Davidson is now presenting these two models here in France on the Côte d'Azur. Between Marseille and Montpellier, we rode on mountain roads with, yes, bad tarmac, pretty bumpy roads, and I'd say it's brave of them to present these motorbikes here, because of course it's noticeable that the suspension chugs over particularly bad bumps. You can adjust the spring preload at the rear, otherwise you can't do anything about the suspension. We have a 49er fork at the front, and everything is very much geared towards comfort. So I'm going to say that someone might say, well, they're not as comfortable as I expected. That probably won't be the case. I think everyone will find the necessary comfort that they can and should expect from a motorbike like this. And because I mentioned riding on narrower roads, I realized that the handling of these Harley-Davidson touring bikes is actually very good. So in my opinion, the Softails, although they weigh less and should theoretically be the sportier ones, you have to take a bit of a look. The Harley touring bikes are always the ones that are very comfortable and easy to handle in the bends. Even tight bends, the lean angle clearance, I'll say it's fun. Towards the end, when you pushed it in really hard, there was perhaps a brief grind, and then out of the corner, it was already done again. So you don't really have that kind of real grinding through the bends with the touring bikes. What else is new about Harley-Davidson? The two bikes that really open up a new era for Harley-Davidson visually. The engines are the 117cc cubic inch engines with a displacement of 1923cc. Okay, there are still CVO models with a displacement of 1977cc. These are the 121cc Engineers. Still trouble with the full litre of the single cylinder, but 1923cc. And girls, that's really intensy because girls can ride these things too. The seat height is really pleasantly low, and once they're up to speed, they're very pleasant to ride. 117 engine, as already mentioned, with 109 HP at 50-20 RPM or 107. The press reports contradict each other a few times, but whether 107 or 109 HP is blunt, because 175 Nm torque at 3500 RPM. And of course, I paid extra attention to the rev counter when I was driving today. I mostly changed gear at 3000. I didn't even get to 3500 because it's so smooth to ride if you shift it in time. I also think the gearbox is great for a Harley-Davidson. It always makes that typical clonk when you put it into first gear. It's very funny to ride in a group. When they pull away at the traffic lights, you just hear how many of us there always were. 15 clonks, clonks, clonk, when all the people hit the one. And yes, the engine, that typical kick in the arse of a Harley-Davidson is there. I also think the sound is very good, but there's also enough electronics on board. So engine management, everything is electronic. It works really well, as you would normally expect from such a huge engine with 1 liter of displacement per cylinder, almost 2 liters of displacement per cylinder. The fact that it then stomps really badly, well, I'm in 6th, so from 1500 revs, it revs up. At 1000 revs, it rattles and stomps a bit, but not unpleasantly, because that used to be really bad, and it actually did that quite well, so it did a great job, the engine. Electronics, yes, I don't want to explain it too much now, but it's impressive that Harley now installs lean angle dependent, cornering ABS, traction control and drag torque control as standard, can be adjusted. We have 4 riding modes. I rode a sport most of the time. Also in the dry, the sport mode was, I'll say, the most aggressive motor by its standards of Corsa, but it was still okay for me. When I switched back to road, I realized that it wasn't going so well. Rain is also available, I have to admit, but I didn't need it because the road was good. And then we also have a custom mode that you can configure yourself. Switching modes, a separate button at the bottom of the right handlebar. I think it's great. You can change modes quickly on the button with the modes on the right-hand side, also with tablets, and the indicator button. I think I can use it No, now it's turned off. The indicator button on the right side for the right turn signal, on the left side for the left turn signal. Everything's great on the left, but activating the indicator on the right is a bit of a pain when I have to do something with the throttle grip. There you go. Yes, Harley really wants it that way. And the switch off when you drive straight again works perfectly. That means you have no problems when you drive straight again. It works perfectly. You can't forget it either. The 12.3-inch color TFT touchscreen display is also particularly important when it comes to the electronics. You can set different modes. I like the classic mode best. The Tour mode, where you can view the navigation on 12.3 inches, almost full screen, is I think now the largest screen that a motorbike has is standard, quite full size on it. Apple CarPlay is included, but only Apple CarPlay. So Android fans are a bit unlucky, but the Apple CarPlay works great with the iPhones. Colleagues have tried it out. And then there's the sport mode, where we have the rev counter in the center and the speed inside. Perhaps not absolutely necessary on a motorbike like this. We almost all rode with the classic display, where you have the speed on the left and the rev counter on the left, rev counter on the right, navigation in the center, and you can theoretically touch everything. Or you can operate the four-way switchboard on the left-hand side, press it in the center, and it will be confirmed. Going back, everything is very intuitive. You can adjust everything. The music system is also identical on both. 200 watts of music. I have to admit, I didn't turn it up because I was driving behind it with the GoPro. And then there might be some legal problems with the music producers, so I preferred not to. But I realized that the sound is great, of course, and it works very well. Probably works a bit better on the touring bikes with higher discs. But what we heard when stationary was really great. Incidentally, the cases have become a little wider. So wider in the sense of wider, you can tell. I'm not sure if it's true. A Harley employee said he thinks that the panniers from the predecessor Street Glide and Road Glide would also fit on it, which are a bit longer, because they are a bit shorter now. But apart from that, I think the rear is very nicely done with these typical, or not typical, but now typical LED tail lights. They look cool. I like them both very much. I've already mentioned the engine. It works well. Yes, over particularly rough roads, it did get a bit rocky. But again, great for, well, not catching, because I don't ride that badly with something like that, but I got it under control again straight away. The Dunlop tires, I have to admit, were also impeccable. I had no problems at all in the wet. That used to be different with the Harley-Davidson Dunlop tires, but the tires are really nicely tuned and obviously have enough silica in them so that nothing happens in the wet. Strange dimensions in inverted commas. It's not the typical 17-inch tire at the front, but we have a 130, 60, 19-inch tire at the front and an 80, 55, 18-inch tire at the rear. But, okay, Harley, they haven't been building motorbikes since yesterday or today. They know that it works well on these bikes, on these touring bikes. And it does. Wheelbase 1.625. Yes, you might think that's a lot, but there are also motorbikes with, I don't know, 1,700 and more. Yes, the agility, the handling is there for the fact that these things weigh almost 370 and 380 kilos. I mean, that's a lot of weight, but when they're traveling and rolling, they're really easy to handle, and I'm thrilled. That would be an exaggeration, because I know this type of motorbike. I know it from Harley. I think it's a great evolution of technology, because with the more powerful engine, it delivers really well. I mean, it might be a bit of an exaggeration to say that it revs up nicely, because they can't rev that much. But on their own, they rev up nicely. It's not somehow that you think, oh God, I don't want to go all the way up there. Oh yes, you can turn it out nicely anyway, but you don't have to. And I already mentioned the suspension. 49er fork. Really fat, not adjustable. That's reserved for the CVO models. They are fully adjustable, but they also cost considerably more. And that brings us to the prices. Before I mention the prices, I'll say right away what a nice goodie is in the roof space. Germany, Austria, and Switzerland get the Cardo PackTalk Edge for free, so to speak. Nice goodie. And yes, how much do they cost? In Germany, that's better if I start with German prices, just under 32,000. And in Austria, unbelievable Nova, 38,600. So I've now had to think about it, 6,500 on top, 38,600 euros in Austria, 32,000 in Germany. That's not a bargain for the German price either. But I think that's my conclusion, my resume. Visually, really well done, really well done. Harley has endeavored to continue this traditional look. It would be pointless if they suddenly looked completely different. They don't. But it's still a massive development, I'd say. Street dress suits me perfectly. I'll have to get used to road dress. But I think I'll really like it then too. I actually wanted to mention the road dress right at the beginning. More agile. I just like the ride more. And yes, if you can afford them and want them, you really can't go wrong with the latest models. If you can't quite get to grips with the look, I think there are still a few road dresses available. Be quick if you really want an old one, but the new ones are definitely better in terms of riding, the engine, and the electronic gadgets. Because I've already spoken to people who have said yes with the mouse, cinema there, and I don't know, and then they tried it and got on really well with it. And then the step back to the old one, that's a real step backwards. So you're better off with the modern models. Yes, that's actually it. My ramblings about street dress and road dress. I know Jacqueline has changed a bit again. I think Jacqueline wants to appear more often, I can tell you that. Maybe she'll come back a few more times this year. This time, because they are so fat, she squirmed a bit and didn't take part. But I hope I've served you well with my report on the 2 new Harleys. And yes, subscribe to our channel. Please share this video with people who might be interested in the 2 models. Yes, thank you for listening and watching, and a very, very friendly goodbye.